good morning, good evening, whatever time it is on your side of the world. My name is Ron322. I'm here to actually do a post-arc thoughts video. So usually I do these at the end of each arc, and of course the last video I did, I kind of did a double whammy. In this case, I'm actually covering two things in one again, mainly because they weave together. All right, so if you see the pictures, the one up here that shows Masayoshi Shido and our former president, I'm gonna credit at Shido9 on Twitter. That's where I actually got the picture from. And the picture of Yaldabaoth over here, that's actually from the concept art from Persona 5 itself. So, where do we begin? So, this one was seeds sown in from the beginning, and it was a long time coming, specifically for our hero, because he had to deal with Masayoshi Shido. Now, here's the interesting part. Again, I've mentioned it many times throughout the videos about a lot of coincidental or not so coincidental references with Masayoshi Shido to former President Donald Trump. When you look at his character throughout the course of the game, he's all about talking about how like our government is useless. Japan's morale with their government and trust is obviously crap. We got to clear them out. Sounds kind of like someone over here that was saying we got to drain the swamp. Our government's yada yada yada. We got to steer this country into a great direction, across the world, and that I can make it happen. Hate to say it, but Masayoshi Shido mirrored a lot of our former president Trump. Don't believe me? Just go ahead. Check my playlist. Check my playlist of Persona 5 Royal. When you see all his drivel, it echoes a lot. Also, let's add another thing, right? The game was in development after the earthquakes and the tsunamis of Japan. During that time frame, Japan was suffering economically, socially, everything. And there was a lot of economical and social uncertainty and frustration. And you see that through the course of this game when you actually listen and read the conversations that people throughout Japan are actually saying in Tokyo. All right. On top of that, you also have the unrest because the political parties, none of them are doing the job. None of them are doing the job right. None of them are making things happen, making things to make Japan better. Shido decides to be that guy, talking all this drivel. Now, granted, nowhere near as vulgar as our former president was. Nowhere near as pervasive. Nowhere near as, fear-mongery, so to speak, to some degree. I don't want to say to some degree because sometimes the president talked a lot of stuff that inspired and some things where it was just straight up divisive. Geminis, go figure. And it's Gemini season, last I checked, so yeah. There was that, the whole belief that they themselves can make it happen. Then also add Persona 5, the original, released in September 2016. Who was gearing up for the presidential election 2016? Donnie over here. Yeah, Donnie over here was prepping up. And then in America, it came out February of 2017. So a lot of things started to echo a lot more, especially when it comes to Shido and Trump. Especially since Shido had this thing where like anyone that was gonna screw things up for him from winning office, this and that, whatever, take him out. Just like the other guy, to certain degrees. And then the whole premise just reeked of make Japan great again. Kind of like how we got this guy up here being like, make America great again. Same drivel. It was just the parallels were just too similar. Now, granted, things were a little bit different here because of Royal, because the update that they did, which released in 2019, end of 2019 Japan, end of March 2020 here in the States. And what happened was the pandemic happened. So a lot of pandemic references were tossed all over the place in the game, all over the place, all over the place. So then the premise went from it resembling Trump running for office in 2016 to kind of coming off when he's trying to gear up for re-election in 2020. I found that very bizarre, but yet somehow it meshed. Shido was the foil for that. The other thing, and of course, this obviously is where the references end, because of course Masayoshi Shido, his deadly sin is pride. Of course, he's arrogant, and then when you see his palace, right, all of Tokyo, all of Japan in ruin, while his ass is all comfy in the diet building, all cozied up, sitting on that cruising ship, sailing, while the rest of Japan is drowning. It's just him and his constituents. The way some people see the way Trump left isn't all that far of a stretch. You know, he did what he wanted to do, whatever it meant. And when he left office, for better or worse, left quite a bit of a mess for the rest of the country to clean up after. That's where, again, the differences change in the sense that, again, Shido reflects more Trump during 2016 than 2020 in that regard. But the attitude is very similar. You know, she's new generation. Like he talks about, like Ryuji and other kids. Like what you know, what are we babysitting now? Type of thing. I'm like, that's kind of like how sometimes our former president will talk about the youth today. So it's kind of like I'm like, it's not. I don't think it's too coincidental, given that Atlas has a bit of a good temperature on the radar when it comes to cultural relevancy with this particular franchise. For example, Persona 3, it came out during a time where you had the whole emo craze, metalcore craze that was going on here in the US. A lot of kids are being very emotional, very depressed, very apathetic, which plays and dealing with a lot of death and problems, which is very relevant in Persona 3. Persona 4 was about searching for truth and mystery, and although more of Arena and Arena Ultimax is what came into the previous console generation, it still reflected a time period in America, ironically enough, where a lot of people are beginning to question our government, beginning to question what we see on TV, what we read in the news, because of mystery and murder. Plus the JoJo Bizarre reference to Diamonds is Unbreakable. There's that. Whereas Persona 5, we were dealing with a lot of current stuff. You know, when it comes to reforming society, when it comes to dealing with sexual misconduct, when it comes to dealing with plagiarism, when it comes to dealing with abuse, when it comes to dealing with drug trafficking through children, so on and so forth. All of that. I feel like Persona 5 really, like Atlas really put the finger razor thin close to the pulse right there. And then with Royal, they never mind razor thin close, it was spot on with the pandemic, because when they added those elements into Royal, it seemed to resonate everything that we were all going through when it came out over here in the US last year on March 31st. So you got this whole thing. We finally whoop his ass in the style of Fist of North Star. If any of you have seen the original anime series, not the movie, the series, King Rao and Kenshiro go more than once. Their final battle, Kenshiro ultimately wins. And only that King Rao's body reflects a lot like how Masayoshi Shido looks there in that final part where he's all roided up like Bane and everything with a crazy dark aura, just like King Rao when he was fighting Kenshiro for the last time. So I really like that Fist of North Star reference. And in case you're curious, Sega also did release Fist of North Star Lost Paradise. So, you know, there's that, because Sega's got a way with mixing things with Atlas, which is cool. So, when it comes to Masayoshi Shido, there's that. And then when you really thought we were getting the payoff, like, all right, finally, we made this guy spill the beans. He finally fessed up and everything. and people still backed him up. It kind of made me think about what would have happened, what would have, not what did, what would have happened had all the scandal that came out and somehow former President Trump had fessed up. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying, what if the same thing had happened? Would his followers actually just ditch him? Or would they still be like, well, who we're gonna get? I mean, like, he's our guy. He's I kind of felt like that result would have been very similar. Except in this case, Masayoshi Shido not only spilled his guts, but requested to be tried in trial, to be arrested, put through the system, all that. Of course, our previous president would never do that. We all know this. He's Mr. Double Downer. That's just how he is. Again, that's where the comparisons end. But everything else is just too similar. In a good way. Because again, this game was drowned in cultural reference. So then, right when you're thinking like, all right, fine, we're good to go, this is it. All of a sudden, no one remembers who the hell the Phantom Thieves are. So this is where we get to part 2 of this conversation with Yaldabaoth, right? There's a lot packed in there, right? Find out he's the god of control. If you know anything about Gnosticism, that's where Yaldabaoth comes from. From Gnosticism, which was a very weird sect of Christianity that showed up during the first century church. And their belief was there was a divine energy in the universe that decided to create things to understand itself, created a being named Sophia, and then Sophia ended up giving birth to Yaldabaoth, except that she found out this guy's so messed up, she hid him. And that's, again, I'm just scratching the peels of Yaldabaoth. Now, if I were to not talk about the actual origins and just look at the name, there is, given that he is known as a false god or an imposter god in this game, and the fact that you have Satanael, again, another form of Gnosticism involving who we believe to be the devil, yada, yada, yada. If you really look at the name of Yaldabaoth, a lot of things got cut up and put together, if you think about it. Like you got Yah and Yahweh, which means, and of course Yahweh means I am. And then El, which is usually known as God or the Lord, right? So they like abbreviate it right there, Yah. And then the Baoth would be another way of putting in what would in Hebrew be of hosts. For example, Yahweh Sebaoth means I am the Lord of hosts, right? So with Yaldabaoth, I am the Lord of hosts. And then, of course, blasphemy, because remember, this is Persona branching out of Shin Megami Tensei, which is known to do all this type of shit. They just do this. This is how they operate. And then you got Satanael. Obviously, we got the word Satan, which means your adversary or accuser. And then they put the Al. So it's usually kind of like how, for example, you got Hokuto no Ken, which means fist of the North Star. In this place, you got Satanael, which would be the adversary of the Lord. Again, and of course, in context being that this, again, goes back into Gnosticism, when Lucifer finds out that he is not the one true God, that Yaldabaoth is a fraud, he becomes Satanael, which is who he becomes before he gets cast down from heaven and becomes Satan. And of course, in what looks like a Lord Dracula Castlevania giant-sized fashion, we get him as the transformation of Arsene into Satanael, and well, one blast and it's game over. But again, Also the whole collective of conscience, and then the whole it does tackle the issue of how sometimes the world sometimes does not want to deal with itself despite itself, and they just wish and long for someone to just handle everything, right? Thing is, life doesn't really pan out that way. You have to, like, if you really want things in your life to go better for yourself than how they usually are, you have to take charge. You have to be able to make those decisions for yourself. And the whole purpose of defeating Yaldabaoth, the whole purpose of beating Masayoshi Shido, beating Masayoshi Shido, the whole meaning behind that was to stop the psychotic breakdowns, to stop the random conspiracy of people getting killed because there are people tied to him that he did not like, including his illegitimate son, Goro Akechi. Which, again, as I have mentioned in the previous episodes, putting on these headphones, left side, you hear cognitive Akechi shoot first, which means he most likely killed, or if not fatally wounded, the real Goro Akechi. There's that. And then you think that with making this guy confess, that's it. We're good. We're chill. Our path to ruin is done. But no, then we find out that the collective of conscious, they just can't bear that. And then it's like they always want someone else in control, which was an undesirable side effect of the Phantom Thieves, believe it or not. Yeah, they're out here changing people's hearts that are being assholes to other people and, basically doing what superheroes are made of, helping those that can't defend themselves and can't stand up for themselves, being the voice of the voiceless, if you will, as CM Punk would say. But then you end up finding out about the god of control, Yaldabaoth, the false god, and how he's the reason why, instead of things panning out according to plan, so that our hero could just be absolved and just have his name cleared and live his life, everything goes to smush. And then you find out that, the real Igor has been tucked away somewhere in some dark dimension type thing. But we get him back. Find out that Caroline and Justine were originally Lavenza. They got split. Of course, this ain't Dragon Ball, so obviously you couldn't just tell them just do the fusion dance. Don't work that way. Even though in the fusion alarm you see them do the fusion dance. Like, what the hell? But that's that with that. If this were the regular Persona 5, I'd say we've approached the end. Because in vanilla, as they call it, the original Persona 5 game, after this, we get to the ending, boom, that's it. However, because as you saw, I maximized my social link with Akechi, well, almost, maximized my bond with Maruki and with Kasumi. This ain't over. This is not over. Almost. But we still got one more arc left. I'll leave it there for now. And by all means, any questions, comments, I love talking about this stuff because this stuff is pretty dope as hell. And of course, as y'all can tell, I like JoJo. So anyway, Ron322 signing off. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Love you guys. Take care. And well, I'll see you the next time.